Hey, Maureen Zappala here again, bringing you the fraud-free framework information. So we talked about um, the history of the imposter syndrome. And then in another video, I talked about the likely targets. Who does it affect? In this video, I want to answer the question, what's the effect? What does it look like? What is the evidence that I have imposter syndrome? Uh, when I was at NASA as a new engineer, I can remember feeling quite intimidated by the other people that I worked with. When they hired me in 1983, I was hired in a pool of engineers. There were probably, I don't know, I'm guessing about 200 engineers that were hired roughly within the same year and a half time period. So there was a big chunk of people about my age. But prior to that, they hadn't hired anybody in about 15, almost 20 years. So there was a big age gap. And then, of course, this group of people that were well established, well known, highly respected, and certainly much more informed about the ways of the NASA world. So when I started, the I was basically surrounded by other people that were just like me. We were all like, what are we doing? And it was too scary for me to reach over this 15-year gap to ask for help. So I always felt this need to stay quiet. I always felt ashamed that I didn't know more than than I thought I should. And I was just too timid. Part of that's my personality. I kind of like well, I'll figure it out myself kind of thing. But the bigger part of it was I felt like I didn't belong. I mean, I remember thinking, what were they thinking when they hired me? I was not a straight A student in college. But looking back, maybe they hired me partly because I was a girl. It doesn't matter, but the fact is there was still enough evidence in my resume, my not just my grades, but in the things that I did in college and the essay that I wrote and the interview that I had, there was still enough about me that they chose to employ me. So the sometimes so what is the effect of imposter syndrome? I lived with it for so long. It kept me small. It kept me afraid to ask for help. I mean, on the surface, what people saw was that I worked harder than anybody. I was working day and night. I was taking on extra work because I really felt like if I, inside my head, I was thinking, well, if I do enough work, they won't figure out that I don't know what the work should be. So I'll just do it a lot. I remember my first assignment was working with an analog computer, which this totally dates me. An analog computer is, think of a telephone switchboard. Lots of cables, you plug things in, and it was basically creating electrical circuits on this board. Old school, way before any kind of digital computer. In fact, it was even old school back when I started. We transitioned to digital stuff not long after that. But I had never seen an analog computer, not that I could recall. I don't remember seeing one in college. Maybe it's because it was so outdated. I don't know. But I was so scared to ask for help. So I just took a long time to do my work because I was trying to read up on it and try different things. And, I tried and I failed and I tried and I failed. And gosh, I learned eventually how to run this thing. But had I just raised my hand or tapped somebody on the shoulder or said to my boss, I have no idea what I'm doing. I never learned this in college, I would have been a lot better. So, on the outside, it looked like I worked really, really, really hard, and I did. But I also felt very unfulfilled. I felt stuck. I felt like I couldn't get a raise or a promotion because I couldn't even master what I was working on. I felt like I was kind of settling for this job that honestly, I didn't like this initial position, but I felt powerless and I felt like, well, it's probably all I deserve. So sometimes it holds smart people back if they're unwilling to move past their fraud fears, they kind of may feel helpless or stuck. And on the flip side, years later, as I did move into a different job, I worked in this jet engine test facility and became the facility manager, the director of the test facility. On the flip side, that unwillingness or inability to ask for help permeated. Even though I still progressed along and reached a level of, I don't want to say celebrity, but I was the point person for the propulsion systems lab. I mean, everything had to come filter through me across the agency. I still felt like I wasn't qualified for it. I still felt like I wasn't allowed to ask for help. So in a sense, it affected me by limiting my resources. Sometimes too, if you struggle with imposter syndrome, you get so worn out, you just can't enjoy your success. You're tired. You're always stressed. You're always second guessing yourself. You're always anticipating the next challenge. And do I have what it takes? And am I in over my head? And what does everybody think of me? You never can relax. And even when you do get recognized for an achievement, you're quick to dismiss it. You're quick to say, well, it's because I had a good team, or it's because I was in the right place at the right time, or so and so liked me. I mean, you externalize the success. You disqualify your own contribution to your success. On an internal level, it can lead to all kinds of health issues, not just feeling insignificant, but it can cause anxiety. It could cause depression. It can attack you physically. It can worry will eat away, and you just start to be lethargic and discontent, and you check out. So, on that level, I mean, these are the things that drove all those initial clients to the therapist's office back in Atlanta in the 70s. They struggled with the things that drove them to seek counseling. It can go that far. On a systemic level, it can affect an entire company. It is a danger to a company on many levels. In a manufacturing environment, for example, if something is going wrong or wonky on the manufacturing line, and somebody who is skilled enough to see it but not confident enough to raise it up the flag, that's a problem. If they don't step in and say, hey, wait, can we stop the line? I want to check this out. If they don't feel like their voice is heard, there could be a flaw that will perpetuate and propagate through that manufacturing line. That's a problem. If somebody is in a sales position and they maybe are meeting with a client that they perceive is in some way intimidating, or maybe predisposed to not hearing what they have to offer, or maybe there's some other kind of bad juju going on. If that salesperson struggles with imposter syndrome, if they feel like they don't measure up, if they can't own their greatness as they come to the table, if they can't speak with conviction and authority and connectivity and compassion to that person, if they feel like, oh no, I don't think I could do this, then they're gonna chop them off at the knees. And what does that mean? It's less profit for the company. So on a systems level, it affects the company. It also can affect a company if you're in management and you are looking at your people, and you could very well assume, for example, there's a skill gap because there's a job that needs to be done, and you're looking around your people, and I don't know if there's anybody that could do the job. But meanwhile, there could very well be somebody who's looking at that job thinking, oh, I really would like to do it, but I don't know if I could. I'm not qualified. I'm not confident. So what looks like a perceived skill gap is really a confidence gap. But you don't know that. So as an employer, you may feel like you have to go outside the company to go fill in that job. What does that mean? You've got acquisition costs, you've got onboarding costs, you've got additional costs, you got time to get that person up to speed. Whereas if you knew that imposter syndrome was something your people struggle with, you could be proactive to learn to recognize the symptoms, develop the conversations to help people overcome it, and create a culture where that imposter syndrome will be less of an issue. But bottom line, I think the biggest way that imposter syndrome affects people, in other words, what is the effect, is, and I remember saying this to myself, this isn't what I thought my career would be like. I thought it would be more fun. I thought it would be easier. I thought I was a good match for this, and I'm not. Even though I was. You see, if you worked hard for a career, I dreamed of being an engineer from the time I was like 7. This was my dream. So for me to come face to face with the reality that it really wasn't the dream job that I thought it was, because I'm too stressed trying to, keep my head above water, that just didn't sit right with me. I mean, your work should be fun. It should be fulfilling. It should be an adventure. It should be challenging, but not so draining and debilitating where you can't even enjoy it. So that's the reason it's so important to try to overcome this imposter syndrome, because you could reverse all of that. You could start feeling like you are, made to measure for this job, that you bring in skills and capabilities, that your confidence matches your competence, that you have influence, that you are not drowning, you're not in over your head, and more importantly, this is the job that I thought it was going to be. I feel so well suited and so perfectly capable to do this job. So that's what the fraud-free framework will help you to achieve. So that's who it affects. I said that in the last video. This was the effect. What you can expect is to be reversed, delivered, released, I guess, from all of that. And that's what the fraud-free framework will do for you. So stay tuned for more videos, because in the next set of videos, we are going to dive into those 5 strategies, starting with strategy number 1, which is to recognize it. So hope you stay with me.